Hi, I'm Nikki from Find Me Crafting. I've been dying to make some corner bookmarks for a while. These things are awesome because they slide over the edges of your pages when you're ready to mark your place. They don't do any damage to books, of course, and they fit on all different sizes. Paperbacks, hardcovers, journals, planners, they fit them all. And because they require so little fabric, they're the perfect scrappy little sewing project you can whip up in minutes, which is why I'm making them this month in July because I'm doing Christmas in July. I am sick of getting to the end of the year and having this long list of things I want to make, and it either stresses me out to finish it or I don't actually finish it. So I'm going to start early, and this is my first project. These things are going to be awesome for friends, teachers, neighbors, stocking stuffers. You can just make them on repeat because they whip up in just minutes. To make it even easier to give them away, I have an instruction card in my Etsy shop that slides right into the bookmark. The link for that is in the description box down below. And these would also be great for craft fairs and markets. And I know you guys are already thinking about what you're going to make, if not already prepping. If you want to use fabrics that have fun design elements you want to make sure get included at the top of your bookmark, I'll show you a really easy way to get perfect placement every time. If you want to add a slightly plainer color to the top of your bookmark, I can show you 3 different ways to add design elements to the top. And for 2 of the methods, I have a whole sheet of designs you can download for free to add to your bookmarks. And I'll share a quick method that helps you avoid that backstitch blob on the front of your bookmarks. So while these bookmarks are perfect any time of year, I'm gonna throw on some Christmas music, brew up some Christmas tea, and get ready to start making Christmas in July. Come on, I'll show you how. Let's talk about what you're going to need for supplies. You are going to need some cotton fabric. You need 3 pieces of fabric for each bookmark. They will all be cut to 4 inches wide by 4 inches tall. You obviously can mix and match patterns and colors, whatever you want to do. A lot of times I like to have the front and back of my bookmark. So this area here is what I'm calling the front. And then the back, I like to have those be the same fabric. So I'll cut 2 of one fabric and then a 3rd fabric that'll go on top. That'll be a different pattern or print. You can also choose to have all 3 be different colors and patterns, whatever you want to do. But 4 by 4 is your measurement. For each bookmark, you're also going to need 3 pieces of interfacing. I'm using Heat and Bond, the Craft Extra Firm for these. You can actually get away with only 2 pieces. You can have 1 square piece and then this triangle piece. I like mine to have a 2nd piece of the iron-on inside. I like how it makes it sort of extra firm, but you can definitely just do these 2 and it will work. These square pieces need to be cut at 3.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches tall. And you're also going to have another piece cut to the same dimensions, 3.5 by 3.5, and you're going to want to line them up. I line up the 2 points here and cut it in half right down the middle. So that's what this is. This is just half of another 3.5 by 3.5 inch square, and you just need 1 of those for each bookmark. You're also going to need a sewing stiletto. That's this really pointy bit over here. If you don't have a sewing stiletto, you can actually make your own. This is called a pokey tool, and basically it is a sewing stiletto here on the end. You can add beads to it just for fun, and you could add another bead on the top or a Disney Dorable. I do have a tutorial for making these if you'd like to make your own. You're going to need a lighter. A turning tool is very, very handy for this project. It is not necessary though. You need an iron and ironing board. And then just some basic sewing tools like a cutting mat, a cutting ruler, a rotary cutter, sewing pins and or clips, and fabric scissors. Another thing that you don't have to have, but I highly recommend, is to create your own template. And this is just made with an inexpensive cutting board. It's a little bit thicker, but it's very easy to cut. I have cut this one to 4 inches by 4 inches. And then I just used a pen to draw a line down the middle from one corner to the other. And I will show you in a minute why this is just absolutely invaluable for this project. I'm going to walk you through 3 different ways that you can add designs onto the top of your bookmarks. This way is by using a cricketer silhouette and some heat transfer vinyl to transfer the designs onto the top. If you wanted an option like that, the other supplies you're going to need are some heat transfer vinyl in whatever colors you want, a cutting mat, a weeding tool, and either an iron or a press like this. This is the Easy Press Mini, which I absolutely love. Another option is to use these fabric transfers. They do come in transfers that are good for light fabrics. They also have one that is great for dark fabrics. And the process for using them is the same. And I will show you how you can print out your design and iron it on using these. The easiest option is to buy a pre-made iron-on. And I will show you how to add these sort of designs right onto your bookmark. If you're using a store-bought pre-made design, you're probably also going to want some parchment paper. Let me show you why you're definitely going to want to have one of these templates. One of your pieces of fabric is going to be a square cut to 4 inches by 4 inches, and we are going to fold it in half. And this is going to be the top portion of the bookmark. It's going to be this piece right here. And if you have a fabric like this one, and you definitely want Winnie the Pooh to be in the center of your bookmark, you want it to look more like this. This template is how you're going to easily make sure that that's going to happen, because this line right here is where we're going to fold the fabric. So if you line it up on your fabric before you cut, and you get Winnie the Pooh here all centered up, and he's got just a little bit of space above the line and a little bit of space at the top because there will be a seam allowance. Now you can take your fabric marking tool and you're going to just trace around this template. And because it's a little thicker plastic, it's easy to trace around. And then you cut out your square. And when you fold it, you're going to have perfect placement. You're going to know exactly what you're going to end up with on the top of your bookmark. Another example, I made this little stitch one, and the back is a bigger portion of stitch, but you can see he's kind of huge. He's really big. And I wanted to make sure that I got in his hand and the heart, but I was okay to cut off some of his ears. And using my template, I could decide exactly what I was cutting. I knew exactly what he was going to look like at the end once I sewed it. And it doesn't even have to be just one particular element. When I was cutting these gnomes, I wanted to have as many full face gnomes as I could get. I found the gnomes that I wanted, I shifted around. I definitely wanted these 3, and I knew exactly what it was going to look like. Without this, you're basically just shooting in the dark and hoping you get it right. It is definitely worth it to make yourself this template. It's just going to take a couple minutes to do anyway, and it is going to make this top portion so much more fun to cut fabric. It's almost like a fussy cut where you're just cutting specific areas that you want. But this way, you know you're going to get them centered up perfectly. Once you have your fabrics cut, you want to add your interfacing to the back of your fabrics. So you want to flip it over to the back side. You want to use the side of your interfacing that has the adhesive. You can feel it, it's slightly rough. And you're going to want to center it up. There is supposed to be a 1/4 inch border around the outside where there isn't any interfacing. Center it up as best you can. Hold it in place, flip it over because you want to iron from the top of your fabric. And then just iron like this. If you iron from the other side, the interfacing buckles and it kind of shrinks inward and it pulls your fabric and it's really not pretty. Don't do it. You're gonna wanna just do it from the side. And if you like the extra firm bookmark, you're gonna wanna do that for your front and back portions of fabric. For the piece that's gonna go on top of your bookmark, you wanna flip it over and fold it in half, line up your edges, and give it a quick little press just to create that center line. You wanna grab your triangle piece of interfacing and push it right up to that line, that crease that you just made, and center it up so you have about an even amount of space here without the interfacing. Close it, and I'm gonna flip it over so I'm ironing from the back again, and just iron it in place. grab your pins or clips and it's time to put this together. I want this to be the front with this on top. So I'm gonna lay this with the pretty side up on my mat here. I'm gonna line up my edges and corners with the corner piece. And then on top of that, I'm gonna put what's going to be the back. I'm gonna flip it over so the pretty side, right side is down. Line up all your edges and then use some pins or clips to secure it. My corner piece is right here up in this top half. So I'm thinking of this as the bottom of the bookmark. We do need to leave a 2-inch section at the bottom that we are not gonna sew in the next step. So I'm gonna mark that off with different colored clips. And now I'm gonna take mine to my sewing machine, and starting over here, I'm gonna use a 1/4 inch seam. I'm gonna sew around the outside of this and stop here so that I am not sewing this 2-inch section in the middle. You do want to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Now we want to trim off the excess fabric here in the corners. So across each corner, you want to cut really close to your stitch line, but obviously you do not cut your stitch line. Next, you want to find your opening that you left, and you want to flip this all right side out. So through the opening, you're going to roll the fabric and push it to the outside. Make sure that the triangle piece is flipped to the right side of the fabric. I've had some where I've flipped it around and I'll have the back showing. It'll be like this. So just make sure it is flipped the way you want it to be flipped. And we want to make sure we push out all the corners. This is where this corner tool is really, really handy. And basically you can go in and just kind of tease out the corners. And I say tease because if you push too hard, you will poke a hole through your fabric. So just gently push out each of the corners. In our next step, we want to close this opening. So we want to fold the edges of our fabric into the inside, and they kind of naturally do that on their own because they have a seam on either side. You want to just fold it so it looks pretty so that you can't see your back fabric from the front. Get it all lined up. Then you want to give it a good press with your iron because it does look kind of wrinkly in here where we have manhandled it as we flipped it right side out. You want to iron the entire thing. Iron the corner triangle piece and the front and the back. Next, we want to bring it back to the sewing machine and we want to sew closed the hole that we flipped right side out through and also top stitch the rest of the bookmark. I am going to show you a trick so that you don't end up with this little blob from back stitching. We want to secure our threads, but we don't want to see this from the front. So we are going to sew around the outside of the bookmark with like a 1/16 inch seam. So I get really pretty close to the edge of the bookmark itself as I'm sewing. And here's where this trick begins, where we don't end up with the back stitch look on the front. The back stitch blob is what I think of it as. I start just a little bit beyond where my opening is, about 1 inch in. And the first step to this trick is do not backstitch at the beginning or the end. I'm going to sew all the way around without any backstitching. I should also mention that you want to leave yourself some long tails in the beginning once you get started. So you begin here, do not backstitch, go all the way around. And now I'm coming up on this last little stretch. And what I want to do is get pretty close to it. And then I'm going to hand crank my last stitch or two so that I'm not overlapping my first stitch. I'm getting right on top of it and then I stop. So now I'm just going to hand crank so that my last stitch here, I'm going to go down just right on top of my first stitch. I'm going to go down into my fabric with my needle and I'm going to stop. Don't bring it back up. Pull up your presser foot. Now you have to bring it back up to get it out. And you're going to want to leave yourself a long tail. Cut that for this next step. So you have all of your little tails hanging off. You want to flip it to the back side. So you have your bobbin threads, the ones that are already on the back. And you're going to grab your starting tail from the bobbin and you want to just tug on it. And you want to tug until that little loop kind of pops up. That's your top thread. You want to use your stiletto and you want to grab it and just pull it through. And that's pulling one of your top threads through to the back. So see, now there's only one thread on the front. I'm gonna do the same thing with my ending tail, where I just pull up and it pops that little loop up right there. You wanna grab that with your stiletto and pull it through. And now there are no little threads on the front, and we're gonna secure it now so that it's never gonna move. You wanna take your bobbin thread and your top thread that you started with. There's two kind of on the right and two on the left. And you wanna just tie them together. So I'm gonna tie my top and bobbin threads together that I started with. And you wanna pull it all the way down close to the fabric, kind of pull it a little bit tighter. You don't wanna break your thread, but you need to pull it tighter. And you can do one knot or two. And then you want to repeat that process with the two threads from where you finished. Now we can trim these off, and you want to get not all the way down to the fabric, but pretty close, just to trim them off. And you're going to end up with these tiny little tails, and that's okay, because next you grab a lighter and we're going to burn these. You just light your lighter and just rub it over the top, and they shrink down and it seals them. These are never gonna come undone because they are melted together, and there's no bobbin blob here on the front. And if you aren't adding any design to it with iron-ons of any kind, then this one's done. It's looking awesome and it's ready to go. Let me show you how to add store-bought iron-ons. You wanna get out your sheet of designs and cut out any of the ones that you're actually going to be applying to your project. I've laid mine out the way I kind of want it to look. I think I'm gonna experiment a little bit, but I am gonna grab my really well-used parchment paper here. I wanna do each of these one at a time because you don't wanna accidentally iron your design onto the front of this plastic on part of your other design. So I'm gonna start with this one. I'm gonna slide my parchment paper underneath because I don't want to accidentally iron on to this back portion. You can use a regular iron with no steam. I'm just using the Cricut Easy Press Mini because it doesn't have steam, so it works, and I can control exactly where I'm ironing. So I'm just gonna iron this section right here. And I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna see if it's transferred. It has transferred. So I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna trim off this portion that I don't want. And I'm going to trim off this portion that I do not want. And then you're just going to lift your carrier sheet up, making sure everything is adhered. And that part is on there, and look how awesome it looks. So I'm going to move on to the other portions of my design and continue adding them. I'm also going to be covering the portion of design that I've already put on with another piece of parchment paper, because if you iron directly on top of that, it will melt. So I'm going to cover that up so it's protected. And look at that. It is gorgeous, and I didn't have to design anything or print anything. It's a super easy, beautiful way of adding designs to the bookmarks. If you'd like to use printable fabric transfer sheets and want my free designs, click the link down in the description box to download the free PNG file. Keep in mind, words and images need to be reversed to show up correctly for this method, which is why things will look a little wonky when you open it up. Put your printable fabric transfer sheet into your printer, open the file in your computer, and print it out. I have to change mine from landscape to portrait to print correctly. Cut around the design that you want, place it on your bookmark with the backing sheet facing you, and iron with no steam, or use the Cricut Easy Press Mini. Let it cool for a few minutes and then peel the backing off, making sure the design has transferred properly. That's all there is to it. Pick any of the 15 designs to put on all of your bookmarks. If you have a Cricut, you can use heat transfer vinyl to put the designs onto your bookmarks that way as well. you can use my free SVG file down in the description box and upload the designs into Cricut Design Space. At that point, you want to ungroup the images and then select each element of the designs you want, and under the Attach button on the right, click Weld. Make sure each design is sized to about 2.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches in height in order to fit the area. You can do this by changing the measurements in the boxes at the top. Delete the designs that you don't want to use, or I like to just change the color of the specific ones I'm using. When your designs are ready to go, click Make in the upper right-hand corner. And then from the next screen, make sure to toggle on Mirror for any of the colors that you're planning to cut. Then click Continue. Once your Cricut machine has loaded, choose your settings. I choose Everyday Iron-On, and then I change the pressure from Default to More. Put your heat transfer vinyl onto your cutting mat with the shiny side face down and insert it into your machine. Once it's done cutting, you can take it out and weed out any areas you don't want, like the centers of letters and the background. Then use your Cricut Easy Press Mini or an iron with no steam to iron the design onto a bookmark. I remove the plastic backing and then cover the whole design with parchment paper to iron on top of it one more time to make sure it's all ironed on securely. And that's it. Super simple, super cute, and perfect for gifting. I hope this inspires you to get a jump start on your holiday sewing or stash some of these away for future gifts. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that little bell so that you don't miss the next project. You'll find all of the free downloads and supply links in the description box below, including the link to my Etsy shop for the gift tags. Happy crafting!